Howdy folks, glad you're here. This is going to be a rant on goaltending. I don't need much of an excuse to talk about goaltending. I'm a goalie. I love watching goalies, reading about goalies, and studying goalies, and learning about them, and because it's such a mental battle for them a lot to be consistent and all that kind of stuff, and that's why it's hard to judge goalies from year to year. And so I don't judge too harshly when somebody has a list about goalies that I disagree with. I figure as long as I agree with it to some extent, or I understand their logic, it's fine. Even if they don't have the same number one as I do, usually fine. However, ESPN took a massive turd that they dumped. I think it was after some Indian food. Maybe it was Mexican. Don't quote me on that. Anyways, they titled it their 2024 NHL goaltender rankings, and it's dreadful. Just dreadful. Their goal with it was to combine the opinions of players and executives and to survey them and to have each of them make their top 10 list of top 10 goalies this year, and then they average that out to make a list, and the result is terrible. The main issue with that is, one, they only took 10 players and 10 execs, so it's a small sample size, and two, the problem with asking players and execs their opinions is they don't have much time to focus on all of the analysis. Players, for example, are focused on their craft, their play, and what they can do. They don't have time in their day to nerd out about all the numbers and go through all these goalies individually to have a really strong opinion. So they often go off of name recognition. And executives are in a similar position. Executives do have more time to look at the numbers, but often they're part of running a 9-digit franchise. They don't have the same kind of time that someone like me has to look at these numbers. And not to say my opinion is right. I think if a player or an executive had the same amount of time as I had to research all this stuff, they would have an opinion that's probably more correct than mine, but they don't have that kind of time. And if you're saying, well, Isaac, it can't be that bad, yes it can. It really shocked me that this list didn't come from journalists who we know don't know anything these days, and from players and execs, but it's still pretty bad. There are 5 goalies on this list that are fair, good placements, and there's 5 that are just bad. All 10 of these goalies are good goalies. If you wanted to make a top 10 list of goalies going into the season, and this was your list, it's a good list because all these goalies have had really strong seasons. But I talked about goalies are inconsistent because it's a mental battle. It's very easy to have a bad start of the season and just say, okay, that's how the season's going to go. It's why I'm impressed with Skinner, because he turned it around very strongly a couple months ago, but it's very hard to do that. And so once a season goes one way, goalies kind of perform that way. If they're a great goalie, they will show some flashes of brilliance even in their bad seasons, and all these goalies that are mentioned do that. So I'm not saying any of these goalies are bad, but there are 5 of them who are having a bad season and should not be considered in a top 10 list, because this top 10 list is for this current season, not for any given day or any of that kind of stuff, who you want going into the next season. No, it's about this season, and 5 of these guys should not be on there. So we'll start with number 1, Connor Hellebuck. That's fine. I wouldn't put him number 1, but I totally understand if you do. So the list isn't wrong there, fortunately, but it gets really bad second. So I'm going to show you what I got here in front of me. You've probably been looking at before I get into the second guy, because what I'm going to do is, as I go down the list, and if it's a guy who's not on the list that I made, I'm going to talk about him. And there's these stats. So I took 24 goalies who I felt could be in a conversation for top 15 on the season right now, as well as goalies who probably shouldn't be but are mentioned on ESPN's list. Some stats that you might be unfamiliar with. This first category here is goalie point share. I don't remember exactly how it's calculated. You can look at Hockey Reference for that. That's where I got it. It's basically a way to show the worth of a goalie, and it's really relies on quantity over quality in that form, and I think that is important. A lot of people forget how important uh, quantity is because there's a lot of wear and tear on goalies. That's why they don't play 82 games. Games played, I'm sure you're familiar with. Points percentage, save percentage, goals against average, I'm sure you're familiar with. This is shutout percentage. So it's the percentage of starts that resulted in a shutout for the goalie. Quality start percentage and really bad start percentage. I'm going to read from my notes because I wrote it down. That comes from, the numbers come from Hockey Reference, but the stats were developed by Rob Woolman. So quality starts percentage is the percentage of starts in which the goalie had a save percentage that was greater than the league average save percentage, or in starts where they faced less than 20 shots, they had a save percentage of at least 885. A goalie has an average of 530 quality save percentage. Really bad starts, however, are starts in the really bad start percentage is the percentage of starts in which the goalie had a save percentage below 850. So those are two stats that really talk about our goalie's consistency or the defense's consistency in front of them. I really enjoy those stats. I think they're very important, and I think they should be used more. This is saves per 60 minutes, the ones I'm highlighting now, and that's high danger saves per 60 minutes. So I took the high danger shots faced from NHL Edge and then divided by the minutes played. This is high danger save percentage, also via NHL Edge, which is also where I got the mid-range save percentage and low-range save percentage. And lastly is goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. I think that's probably the best stat right now. I think it could be better. I actually have an idea about developing one of my own, but it is still a really good idea of a good way of measuring quantity and quality in the same statistic. The problem is each site that measures it has their own model. So what I did is I took the average of Money Pucks, goals saved above expected, and Evolving Hockey, and that's what this is. So the second goalie, back to the list, second goalie ranked is Andrei Vasilevskiy. Which, hey, yeah, he's a great goalie. Coming into the season, if you put him as number 2, that's a good idea. But not at this point in the season. He has not been well. He likely returned from injury too soon, might be a possibility, and the fact that Tampa Bay has relied on him so heavily, why was that hard to say, probably brings down his stats. So I'll go down to the bottom here because this is all in alphabetical order. He's played 32 games so far, which isn't a lot until you realize he's came back in November, late November. He's won most of them, at least, more or less because of the team in front of him. His save percentage is below 900, it's at 898, and his goals against average 294. He has a proficiency of showing why he is incredible and why he can be a number 2 goalie in the league, including the game against Edmonton, where he had a over 50 save night, but he has just not been consistent. He is under half for quality start percentage, and despite not facing too many shots, Tampa's defense isn't what it used to be, but it's still limits shots quite well. Vasilevskiy is still making 6.66 high danger saves per 60 minutes, which is a decent amount. But otherwise, there's not many impressive or notable stats going on for Vasilevskiy, and he's certainly not number 2 goalie in this season right now. That's no disrespect to him. He is certainly probably going to be a Hall of Famer. In any given season, he can be a number 2 goalie or a number 1, but that's not this year. Third is Thatcher Demko. I'm going to leave him because he is in my list, so I'll talk about him on my list, as well as Hellebuck and any other goalies that make my list. But the next 4 are all goalies that didn't make my list. Next is Igor Shesterkin. I feel like this is also name brand for what he did 2 years ago. He is not having a great season either. A lot of the Russian goalies are actually on the down low. He's played 35 games. He's won quite a lot of them, but that Again, I think it has more to do with his team in front of him. His save percentage is just above 900, and it's not a very impressive list of numbers here, including in high danger save percentage that is below the league average, below 800 even. He doesn't face a lot of shots per game, but he is making a decent amount of high danger saves per game. Now, New York Rangers is one of those teams that don't allow a lot of shots, but when they do, they have a stronger tendency to be high danger than other teams. Excuse me. Or I preemptively said excuse me before I burp, so I don't know when it'll come, but I said excuse me already. So the next goalie they named is another Russian, Ilya Sorokin. He is having one of the stronger seasons of the goalies that I didn't include. It started a bit shaky, but he has had a heavy load because New York Islanders defense has not been good. He is saving 31.32 goals per game, or per 60 minutes specifically. That is the highest number on this list. I believe it's the highest number of any goalie besides Jet Greaves because he played one game, and I know he had over 40 saves. He might have had 50 saves, but anyways, so that is favorable to Sorokin. He's also saved the fifth best 8-3 out of 8. He's at the fifth best in high danger save percentage, at least of guys on this list. I didn't go over every goalie. I will at the end of the season. It's just on this list. Any of the numbers in blue doesn't mean that they're top 5, at least of goalies on this list, which is probably top 5 in the league. Deeper blue, the higher on the list. So those are going for Ilya Sorokin, in that he is still maintaining a 9-10 save percentage despite the defense in front of him not playing very well. But there are still, in my opinion, 10 goalies who are having a better season, including some that surprised me. Next was Jake Ottinger. I don't know why I always say Ottinger. It might be Ottinger, but I've heard Ottinger more. He is winning a lot, but it's not usually because of him. I am a fan of his, but I'm not going to defend him. He's sitting at a 904 save percentage. He's not making a lot of high danger saves. At least at a rate. He's saving over 6, which is, I think, around average, but it's still below 800%. His goals saved above expected is close to 0. There's not much good in Ottinger's game right now as there could be, so he's still a dangerous goalie, as we all know. I'm excited to see him when he is dangerous, assuming it's not against a team I like. But that's not happening right now. Next is UC Saros. He's another goalie, highly dangerous goalie. Similar to Sorokin, I think a lot of his stats are being harmed maybe because of the team in front of him. The team in front of him is winning, though. And their defense is actually doing decently well, but their defense is pretty inconsistent. And it's also UC Saros' workload has caught up with him for the last 2 years. I would say he was the busiest goalie. And this year, even though his defense has taken a step forward in front of him, he's still playing monster 44 games. And I just think workload has caught up with him. He's at a 902 save percentage. He's allowing over 3 goals a game. Not a lot of impressive numbers here. He does have one of the league's better mid-range save percentage. As much value as that holds, it's at 929. But he is in the negatives for goals saved above expected. In Money Puck's case, Evolving Hockey does have him in a positive, but not by much. The next goalie. So those are all 5 goalies. I've already mentioned all 5 goalies that I don't agree with being in the top 10. The last 3 that are mentioned, I do agree in the top 10 are Swayman, Bobrovsky, and Ullmark. And so I'll get into those as I get to my list. Just a really bad list. And so making my list, I was actually really surprised by a couple names on here. And I'll get into them. I'll just quickly say on the last list on ESPN, they did interview an analyst, NHL goalie analyst, and he said some things that I agreed with and some things I really disagreed with. One of the things he says is he wants to see Hellebuyck have more to prove himself as a playoff goalie. He has. He can prove himself more. He His stats aren't as pretty in the playoffs as they are in the regular season, but he's still sitting at a 916 save percentage during his 40 playoff games, in which he's won 17 of them. He has 3 shutouts as well. Um, I remember when the Oilers played him, and he swept the Oilers. The Jets didn't sweep us, not at all. Connor Hellebuyck swept us. That was incredible. So he's absolutely capable of being a playoff netminder. Um, and Winnipeg has had some good years with him. Hellebuyck has won 3, maybe 4 series. 2 of those came in his first year in the playoffs when Winnipeg went to the conference finals before losing to Vegas. When Vegas went on to lose to the Capitals. And then he also mentioned that the thing he said I agreed with is he was very shocked that Jacob Markstrom was not mentioned. I totally agree. Yeah, that's crazy. The ESPN writer of the article also mentioned some names that he was surprised was left out. 2 of those I was not surprised were left out. He mentioned Freddie Anderson. I don't know how long he's been following hockey, but Freddie Anderson has been out with a blood clot since like close to the beginning of the year. So yeah, no, he's not going to be on the top 10 list for this year, unless I'm misunderstanding how they did the article. Maybe it was a going forward kind of list, but the way it was written, it sounded like it was for this season alone because it had the year 2024. So, anyways, maybe they communicated it wrong and I'm getting it wrong. But hey, even if I'm getting it wrong, I'm glad to use it as an excuse to talk about goalies and who I think is playing the best. And so let's get into that. Number 10 is Linus Ullmark, which is where ESPN had him. So let's go to him. He's one of 2 Boston goalies on here. His workload isn't too heavy. I think that's one thing pulling him back. So I think by the end of the year, he might drop out of the top 10 list just because he's not playing a ton of games. But part of that is because of Swayman, not because of him. Ullmark in his games has still been very good. I think he's been able to keep his form because Boston hasn't had to rely on him to play 60 games. And they've even been able to rely on him less than they did last year with how well Swayman's been doing. Ullmark does win a large chunk of his games, nearly 700%, or not 700, but 700 points percentage, or .700 is what I mean. He's has a quality start in nearly 70% of his starts, while having one of the lowest really bad start percentages, below 10%. He's also one of the better goalies at long ranges, which doesn't always mean much, but it's nice to know that when a guy shoots from the blue line, your goalie's probably is going to save it more often than others. Most goalies will save it over 97% of the time, but still, it's a comfort to know that your goalie is not going to let that squeaker, sorry. So he's been very good, but again, I think the low amount of starts might pull him out of the top 10 conversation by the end of the year. Next, number 9, huge surprise to me, and I feel almost dumb saying it, but just looking at the numbers and all the blue on his row here, it's Peter Mrazek. I initially wasn't going to include him in this list, but as I was going through the numbers, I said, we'll entertain myself. Probably won't mention him. But then when I was making my list and looking at the numbers, I said, yeah, he's number 9 in my opinion. He might drop out, he might rise, but he is having a very good season behind a very bad team. I always liked him since his days in Detroit. He was good there, and then he bounced around the league as a pretty bad backup. And I figured, well, now that he's in Chicago, it's a similar situation to when he was in Detroit, which was his last really good season. He's on a rebuilding team that's going to rely on him, and he's going to step up. But I am not going to say that I predicted that he'd be a top 10 goalie in the league, or at least arguably he is, in my opinion. I would not have predicted that. He's had a very heavy workload, noted by his 7.7 goalie point share. His 909 save percentage isn't eye-popping until you realize it's on a Chicago team that is very bad on defense. He's making over 30 saves a game. He's making over 7 high danger saves a game. And he, despite being on a team that's really easy to have really bad start percentages, he's kept his bad start percentages to only 8.1. 8.1% of Peter Mrazek's starts have been below 85 save percentage, which is incredibly good. He doesn't have a lot of quality starts because he's on a Chicago team, so I'm not going to hold that against him when he's making 30 saves a game, when he has one of the league's better mid-range save percentage and low-range save percentages. And his high danger save percentage isn't that bad either. I think he doesn't get talked about enough. I think by the end of the season, his workload will catch up with him and he will drop out of the top 10. But as of right now, I feel like he's number 9. I feel like Sorokin and Skinner, Luukkonen, Lyon, and Binnington all might surpass him. But as of right now, he's sitting at number 9. That might be a hot take. I might regret that opinion, but he deserves to be talked about more, and if it has to be me, that's fine by me. Number 8, I had Sergei Bobrovsky. I thought he would have not a bad season, but kind of a down season because he's coming off of a year where he had a heavy workload, where he played all the way to the playoffs. He played very well through those playoffs, but that will take a toll on a goalie, which will usually bring your numbers down. In addition to that, Spencer Knight is in the player assistance program, and so the Florida Panthers will be relying on Bobrovsky a lot. So I figured the heavy workload he had at the end in the spring of last year, as well as a heavy workload this year, will probably take a toll on him. And it did, but only a little bit. Part of that is because Florida's defense has been amazing in front of him. I think both Gustav Forsling and Ekblad are some of the best defensive defensemen in the league right now. That's kind of crazy to say for Ekblad. He hasn't been known for that, but his numbers are just very well. He's been an excellent penalty killer and excellent on even strength defense. Part of that is because of Forsling. I don't know how often they play together, but I assume it's a decent amount. Anyways, besides them, Bobrovsky isn't making as many saves per 60 minutes as the rest of the goalies on this list. It's under 26, and it's under 6 high danger saves per 60 minutes. There's a lot of words here, and I'm just fumbling over all of them. It's 1:06 in the morning. Doesn't really excuse it, but at least you understand. So even though his workload is a little low, which is why he's not a top 5 goalie in my opinion, he's still doing very well. He still has a 914 save percentage. He still has one of the highest points percentages in the league as a goalie. That's third. That's 71.8% of the attainable possible points you can get during game the Florida Panthers get while he's playing. Other than that, not too many notable numbers. 241 goals against average is one of the higher numbers on this list. So he's having a very good season, very good for Florida, very good for him, especially at his age and his contract. You don't want to have $10 million tied up to a goalie who isn't playing so well. I know how it feels when they only get paid half that. But anyways, number 7, I'm really happy about, even though I didn't see it coming. It's Connor Ingram. He was a backup a few years ago, fringe backup, and he even had he was going through some really rough thoughts. I don't believe I can say the word on YouTube, so I won't, but I will leave it at that. His mental health was really struggling, and he had some thoughts that are not healthy to one's mortality. And now it's been turned around in Arizona. Arizona is a very fun place to live and even play. That does get into an argument about the arena. I'm sure players would like to have a bigger arena, but at least when you're done, there's lots of stuff to do in Arizona. Anyways, Ingram, he's played 35 games. He's slowed down a bit even before his injury. He has had quite a few really bad starts. He has one of the higher numbers, or lower, however you want to say it. One of the worst. I don't want to say worst because it's not that bad, but well, it is the worst of these goalies. 27.3% of his starts are considered really bad. Yet the reason I put him on here is because, one, I feel like part of that has to do with the team in front of him. He has one of the heavier workloads per 60 minutes, and he's making those saves per 60 minutes, as I'm highlighting here. And he also has a propensity to, I think that's the right word, to take over a game, because despite the team in front of him, he is second on shutout percentage. 15.2% of his starts results in a shutout. He also has one of the league's higher high danger save percentages, which I do consider a strong indicator of a goalie's talent. He's at 851, which is tied with Aiden Hill for second, at least on this list. But I would imagine in the league, because I left out very few goalies who would have a higher number. Again, I didn't go over all of it, and I would at the end of the season, but I wanted to keep this a bit shorter, and it's already going to be a long video. So anyways, Ingram is having a very strong year. The goalie analyst that ESPN quoted was, I wouldn't say he was surprised that Ingram was left out, but he said that Ingram was having a really strong year, and he wasn't surprised that Ingram did get a lot of votes, actually. He's been quite incredible for Arizona, which is especially good since Vejmelka has had one of his weaker seasons. Number 6, this is another surprise for me, but if you are from the Pacific Northwest, it's not, well, it might have been a surprise coming into the season, but you've probably been following him. His name's Joey Decord. He has one of the league's higher goalie point shares. He's at a 9.21 save percentage, incredible, and a 2.37 goals against average. He's also been very consistent. He has one of the league's higher quality starts percentages and one of the league's lower really bad start percentages, and leads the league in mid-range save percentage. He's been very reliable, very consistent, and has been a huge part of Seattle's success when they are having success this year. One of the things holding him back, in my opinion, is that he makes less than 5 high danger saves per 60 minutes. He is not that good when it comes to high danger chances, but Seattle's pretty good at keeping him or keeping the puck out of those zones. And when they're not in those zones, Decord is very, very good, and has been. And good on for the young goaltender. Seattle's had plenty of goalie, I wouldn't say controversy, but struggles in their short existence when we thought it would be one of their strengths. But it has been a struggle, and a consistent struggle. And Decord has brought a lot of stability to that. Next, number 5 was also left off the list. It's Jacob Markstrom. He's one of the weirder goalies on this list. He has my favorite mask in the league. It's that black mask that he has. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. It's a beauty. Calgary's defense has taken a huge step back. They don't allow too many shots, but they allow a lot of high danger shots. And it would sink Calgary in the standings if it wasn't for Jacob Markstrom. If you're hoping Calgary gets a top-end draft pick, you're probably really mad at Jacob Markstrom, because he's saving nearly 8 high danger saves per 60 minutes. That's a league leading. He also leads the league in high danger save percentage, and he leads the league, according to even Evolving Hockey, in goals saved above expected, and which the average between them and Money Puck per 60 minutes brings him third place at nearly 0.7 goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. He is having an incredible season. He's bouncing back. He is inconsistent, and one of the funnier things is that despite leading the league in high danger save percentages, he's one of the worst at low range saving percentage, saving just over 95% of the low range shots that come at him. So that's from the blue line area. It's just kind of funny, honestly. It'd be frustrating, I'd imagine, as a Flames fan, but as an Oilers fan who doesn't hate the Flames, it's just kind of funny. And that way, I'm happy for him. We can talk about the trade talks surrounding him. But as of right now, as a goalie, he should just focus on his craft, and his craft is very strong right now, except when somebody's shooting from the blue line. Number 4 is the other Boston goalie, Jeremy Swayman. I kept him out of the top 3 because he's not playing heavy amounts of heavy amount of games, though maybe my logic, I am being hypocritical because the number 1 goalie has played less than Jeremy Swayman, which probably hints at who it is, probably spoils it, but I do think that might hold Jeremy Swayman out of Vezina. No, he'll still get Vezina votes, but top 3 in voting, at least in my opinion. But until that's all being discussed, he wins more than most goalies. He has a save percentage of .922, which is 3rd in the league. He has a .239 goals against average, which is 4th in the league. He has one of the league's better shutout percentages. 10% of his starts result in a shutout. 70% of his starts are quality. And he has the league's lowest really bad start percentage at just under 7%. He has a decent workload per game. He has a strong high danger save percentage, and he's very good at mid-range and low-range save percentage, and is 5th in goals saved above expected per 60 minutes when averaged out between Evolving Hockey and Money Puck. Here comes the burp, I think. No. It's teasing me, man. It's why I'm having... So, I'm just going to have some water. I talk a lot, and we're talking about goalies. I love talking about goalies. If you didn't know this yet. Anywho, so Jeremy Swayman has been very good game to game. The game tonight, fortunately for the Oilers, wasn't that good. But usually he is very strong. He's a very capable goalie, and yet another young goalie that Boston is developing. Number 3, we're getting into Vezina candidacy. I mean, again, Swayman, I think, will still get votes. Markstrom will still get votes. But when it comes to top 3, these are the 3, in my opinion, who should get the most votes. And number 2 and 3, it was a toss-up. They're so close. But number 3 was Demko. And there's points throughout the year where he's been number 1, he's been number 2, but he's just been incredible. It's actually a toss-up between all 3, but him and second place have very similar numbers. So he's got 2nd in goalie point share. He's played 41 games, and he wins a lot of them. 2nd best points percentage in the league, while maintaining a .918 save percentage and one of the league's higher shutout rates. He also has one of the league's higher high danger save percentages and higher goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. He's just been incredible. Vancouver's defense is a lot better than it used to be, but it still has some inconsistencies, which will result in high danger chances. And Demko is very good in those high danger situations. Again, as pointed out, he saves 84.3% of those high danger shots, which is, again, one of the best. He's just been incredible. I'm a fan of his, but also not a fan of the Canucks, so I'm very mixed. But anyways, focusing on him, he's just been incredible, as well as most of the players in Vancouver. Number 2, Connor Hellebuyck. Very similar, and honestly, if you say Demko's better than Hellebuyck, that's fine. I can see where you're coming from. Hellebuyck is a slightly better goalie point share, despite playing one less game. He doesn't win as much, but he does have a notably higher save percentage at .925, which is 2nd best in the league, and a .220 goals against average, which is also 2nd best in the league. He's been very consistent, with 67.5% of his starts being considered quality. He doesn't have as heavy as a workload as he has had in recent seasons, but still a decent amount. He's still saving nearly 7 high danger saves per 60 minutes, and which is good for an 83.5% high danger save percentage. So many words. He also owns the league's 2nd best goals saved above expected per 60 minutes among goalies who have played a good chunk of games. Just an incredible season. Early in the season, it was a bit rocky, it was a bit shaky, and kind of like, well, this is going to be one of his down years, but it turned around quickly, and he's been one of the major reasons Winnipeg was at the top of the league for a bit and is still one of the league's better teams. If Winnipeg is winning, it's because of Hellebuck. Not to diss Brossoit, he's had some good games too. But Hellebuck has just had yet another incredible season. He's an incredible player, an incredible goalie to watch. Number one is my favorite goalie to watch. It's not just because his goalie setups are the best in the league. It's just he is one of the most fun goalies to watch from his attitude, from the way he plays the game. I fell in love with him ever since he kicked the Oilers out of the playoffs last year. Number one is Adin Hill. So the thing holding him back is something I mentioned earlier. He's only played 21 games. Very low. But I think if he still plays a lot of games, I think if he plays over 42 games, which will be kind of tough by the end of the year, he should win the Vezina. If not, it'll be close. Ullmark didn't play that many games last year, but he still got over the 40 games played. But the reason I still consider him number one is just because he dominates game in and game out. He's the most consistent goalie on this list, and he is the most consistently dominant goalie on this list. It's not close. He wins at a higher rate than everyone else on the list. He's got a 75 points percentage. He saves 93.1% of the shots he faces, higher than everyone else in the league. He has one of the league's lowest goals against averages, which finally reached over 2. It did take a while because he was injured, but 2.06. He has a good shutout rate, not one of the top 5, but it's good enough. He has the league's best quality start percentage, which is at a blistering 71.4%. He keeps his really bad games down low. He doesn't make too many high danger saves per game thanks to the defense in front of him, but when he is faced with a high danger opportunity, he is second best in the league at it. He saves 85.1% of those, and normally I don't say most impressively when it concerns low range save percentages, but he is perfect when a shot comes from the blue line or further. He's also got the league's best goal saved above expected per 60 minutes. Frankly, game to game, Adin Hill has been the best goalie this year. I don't think there's much room for argument, but again, as I touched on, he has only played 21 games to this point. It'll be tough to see for him to make a comeback. He'll have to maintain those numbers, assuming Demko and Hellebuck don't have a rise in their numbers while playing a lot of games. And the fact that Logan Thompson, who is noted down here, is playing quite well, will take away from Hill's games, though both of them have had injury issues this year, so that might benefit Hill in giving him more starts or actually end up injuring Hill again. So that's my top 10 list. I'm sure it'll change by the end of the year. I've already talked about some guys that will change. Going back to ESPN's list, you might have noticed that all the 10 goalies I mentioned, none of them were Canadian. There's the burp. It's been waiting so long. As an American who grew up in Canada, I got bullied for being an American, I would be happy to say, haha, there are no Canadian goalies in the top 10. But the list is crap, so it doesn't matter. And the top goalie I mentioned is Canadian. Canadians are still going to be good at goaltending. We can talk about how Canadian goaltenders have fallen off. They're not as dominant. But that'll be another video. There are 2 in my list, including, as I said, number 1. There's 4 Americans. Second, third, and fourth place are Americans on my list, as well as 6th place. There's 2 Swedes, which is 5th and 10th place. A Russian takes 8th place, and a Czech takes 9th place. I'm sure the Russians will populate this list again, as they have regularly, because Shesterkin is having an off season. Sorokin, I wouldn't say it's entirely his fault, but it's been lower for him. It hasn't been as good. And Vasilevsky as well. All 3 of those goalies could jump in to the top 10 race. They're very capable of it. Other goalies I thought were worth mentioning. I won't go through all of them. I'll be very quick because it's late and this is a long video. Binnington, not getting a lot of love because he's allowing nearly 3 goals a game, but that is very impressive when you consider the workload in front of him. He has been very excellent in high danger situations and saves nearly 29 shots a game. Next, Georgiev. I think his numbers are being hurt because of his workload. He had a heavy workload last year, and with Francois' injury, he has yet another year of a heavy workload. He leads the league in 46 games played, and he is winning most of them. So far, so good, but we'll see if that catches up with him at the end of the year. Gibson. Gibson got a few votes on the ESPN list. I am a Gibson supporter. I don't glaze him like the media does because he hasn't really proven that he is what we think he is. He does not win a lot, but again, I think most of that has to do with Anaheim. He does have one of the league's better high danger saves per 60 minutes, but he gets so many high danger shots against him that he can't keep up that save percentage, but is still at a very respectable 82.8%, and does have one of the league's better low range save percentages. Carter Hart, we're going to ignore the legal things surrounding him right now. He got some votes. His year hasn't been as good as it was last year. Fortunately, that hasn't affected Philadelphia too much because everybody else has been much better than they were last year, and in some cases, much healthier. Moving down, Tristan Jarry. I thought he'd have a better year this year, and I'm happy to say I was right, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I predicted that he would lead the league in shutouts. I did not see that coming. His defense the defense in front of him has been quite good, but the offense has been strangely inconsistent, and it's kept Tristan Jarry below a 500 points percentage. But part of it is the goalie too. The goalie should take responsibility, even if their team sucks. Speaking of goalies with teams who suck, Luukkonen, sorry Buffalo, I thought you'd do good this year too. But Luukkonen has been the answer we didn't expect. A lot of people thought Devin Levi, would be the guy. I never liked that opinion because he was still pretty young, and I didn't think he was, and I was worried for Canada's sake, for Buffalo's sake, that when he did so well in the World Juniors, how much of that was Team Canada and him. But I still think he'll be a pretty good goalie. I love his Star Wars nerdism, but until he's the guy, Luukkonen has stepped up majorly. He's had quite a few shutouts lately. By quite a few, I mean like 2 or 3, which is still a lot. He's managed a 910 save percentage. He can certainly jump into the top 10 list, as well as Alex Lyon. He's another goalie who we did not expect would be the guy for a team. He has one of the heavier workloads per game. He has 29 saves per 60 minutes for Detroit, and it's allowed Detroit to win a lot more lately. Next, we will look at Stuart Skinner, a guy whose name is on my back. I mentioned earlier how it's very impressive, and I've mentioned this a couple times in other videos. It's incredibly impressive, the turnaround he managed this year. But part of that is because the defense in front of him is top 10 and is not talked about enough. Of all the goalies on here, he makes the least amount of saves per 60 minutes. Not because he sucks, but because the defense in front of him has been very good. He has sucked at times, yes. He hasn't been super consistent, but he's not the least consistent goalie on this list either. He's mostly been quality. He's stepped up in a lot of areas and has turned his save percentage into a 906, which compared to where it was at the beginning of the year is miraculous, frankly. So the last goalie I'll talk about is Logan Thompson. I talked about him a bit. I am a Logan Thompson fan. He has one of the league's better mid-range save percentages. He doesn't have the most notable stats, and the most notable thing about him right now is his injury history. He keeps getting injured. I think Adin Hill and Logan Thompson both have the potential to be the best goalie duo in the league, but I think that is right now goes to Swayman and Ullmark because those two guys are healthy. Adin Hill and Thompson are not healthy enough to take that spot. But until then, that has been the motherboard monster video of goaltending. I'll have a couple bigger videos at the end of the year because I love talking about goalies. They're fun to talk about, and I'm one of them. I'm one of those crazy loonies Thank you very much for sticking around for this video. I hope you found it informative and that you will share what you learned from this video. And heck, maybe you should share the video too, because I think it's pretty awesome and informative. Or maybe you say, hey, this guy, he is the best white noise machine in the world. I'm okay with that. That still gets me views. If you do view this video, I hope you leave a like. I know I got to earn it, and I hope I have. Please leave a comment. That helps. I'm happy to talk. I'll give you an idea. How about your own top 10 goalies list from this year? That'd be fun to see. See how many other people are wrong, because I'm always right, obviously. This is my channel. And hey, even subscribe. Hit the notification button would also be super helpful. But even if you don't do any of that, I'm grateful that you watched this entire video. And once again, thank you very much. I enjoy doing this. I hope to do this a lot more. These big projects and stuff. Fortunately, it is not my lifestyle. Hopefully it is one point, because I still gotta, work, get a job, make money, all that kind of stuff. But till then, I'm happy to make these videos when I can, and I can't say enough. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, wherever you're at in your day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.